3 months before his wedding, Mason Parker walked into a boutique in Boston's South End for a simple suit fitting. The sign outside read, "Hayes Bespoke and Grooming," modern lettering against warm brick. He'd passed it countless times without noticing. But today, his fiancée Catherine insisted he needed the perfect suit. Mason pushed the glass door open, expecting the usual pretentious salesman. Instead, he stepped into a space that felt nothing like a shop. Warm lighting, navy walls lined with elegant suits, and jazz playing softly. The scent of cedar and bergamot drifted through the air. A man stood sorting fabric samples, tall with broad shoulders and rolled-up sleeves revealing tattooed forearms. He turned at the sound of footsteps. Their eyes met. Mason's stomach dropped. Jackson. For a second, Mason wasn't a successful real estate developer preparing for marriage to the daughter of Boston's most influential property tycoon. He was back at MIT, two engineering students secretly checking each other out, but pretending they weren't. Jackson's surprise melted into a slow smile. Mason Parker, no way. He crossed the room in a few strides, pulling Mason into a quick hug, firm, warm, familiar. Damn, look at you. I haven't seen you since graduation. 5 years since they were part of that crowd everyone called the future tech leaders. 5 years since Mason pushed away feelings he had for Jackson, burying them deep, convinced he needed to be straight, needed to chase success that looked right on paper. Yeah, Mason exhaled, trying to sound casual. I'm here for a wedding suit. Jackson's eyebrows lifted slightly. Your wedding congratulations. His voice was softer than expected. He didn't ask more, just turned toward the suits. Let's find something that feels like you. They moved through the boutique, comparing fabrics and styles. Being around Jackson felt too easy, too familiar. Mason forgot he was supposed to feel nervous about the wedding. Jackson draped a navy suit across Mason's shoulders. Try this one. In the changing room, Mason stared at his reflection. He looked sharp, expensive, prepared. But he didn't look like someone excited about marriage. He looked like someone fulfilling a duty. When he stepped out, Jackson stood waiting. Turn, he said. Mason did. Jackson stepped close enough that Mason felt the warmth of his body. He adjusted the collar, smoothed the jacket along Mason's shoulders. His touch was careful, intentional. Mason swallowed hard. You're good at this, he whispered. Jackson grinned. Still feels weird sometimes. I studied engineering, not this. He gestured at the suits and barber chairs. Mason laughed. So, what happened? You could have been designing bridges or something. Jackson shrugged. After graduation, I got that big tech job in Silicon Valley everyone wanted. Good money, stable, but every day felt wrong. Eventually quit, apprenticed here, then bought the place when the owner retired. Turns out, his eyes softened. This is where I feel alive. There it was again, that quiet authenticity Mason had always admired about him. Something he'd lost in himself long ago. Good for you, Mason said softly, for choosing happiness. Jackson looked at him, beat too long. And are you happy? Mason's throat tightened, but he forced a smile. I'm getting married to Catherine Walker. I should be. Jackson nodded slowly like he sensed what Mason couldn't say. As Mason paid, his mind raced with questions about roads not taken, lives not lived, and why his heart felt more alive in the past hour than in years of planning his perfect future. Have you ever wondered what your life would be like if you'd made different choices, if you'd chosen happiness over expectations? Follow Heart Stories for more moments of truth that remind us it's never too late to find our authentic path. The Walker family's annual charity gala at Copley Square shimmered with Boston's elite, old money mingling with new, champagne flowing as freely as networking opportunities. Mason stood beside Catherine, smiling at investors whose names blurred together. The suit Jackson had tailored fit perfectly, but Mason felt like he was suffocating. 3 weeks had passed since that fitting, and he'd already made 2 unnecessary trips back to Hayes Bespoke with flimsy excuses about adjustments. Robert Walker, Catherine's father and Mason's boss, commanded the room's attention with a practiced ease. His voice carried across the ballroom as he thanked donors and partners. This city was built by tradition, by families who understand values, he said, his hand resting possessively on Mason's shoulder. My daughter has chosen wisely, a young man who embodies everything our company stands for. The crowd nodded appreciatively, but Mason caught the glance between two men near the bar, a knowing look that said they understood what values truly meant in Walker's vocabulary. Last week, Mason had witnessed Robert coldly dismiss a talented designer after discovering the man had a husband. Not a cultural fit, Robert had explained afterward. Clients in our bracket expect certain standards. Mason had nodded, hating himself for saying nothing. Now, watching Catherine charm potential investors, Mason recognized her practiced smile, the same one he wore daily at Walker Real Estate. "You're doing that thing again," Sarah whispered, appearing beside him with a glass of whiskey. Mason's sister was the only family member who knew his truth, had known since they were teenagers, a human rights attorney at a Cambridge nonprofit. Sarah represented everything the Walkers politely tolerated but privately dismissed. "What thing?" Mason asked, accepting the drink gratefully. "That 1,000-yard stare," she said, "like you're mapping escape routes." Later that night, Mason sat alone on his balcony overlooking Back Bay, the lights of Boston's financial district gleaming. His phone buzzed with a text from Jackson. "Suit working out." Such a simple question shouldn't have made his heart race. He typed and deleted 4 responses before settling on "perfect, thanks." Jackson replied almost immediately, "Suit should make you feel like yourself, not just look good for others." The next morning, Mason found himself back at Hayes Bespoke, watching Jackson measure another client. They caught each other's gaze, and Jackson gave a small nod. Mason browsed aimlessly, waiting. When the client left, Jackson leaned against the counter. "Third visit in 3 weeks, he observed. "Must be some wedding." Not accusatory, just honest, the way Jackson had always been. "Catherine's father keeps adding events to the calendar," Mason explained. "Engagement parties, donor dinners. Apparently, marrying into the Walker family is a public affair." Jackson nodded, studying Mason's face. "And that's what you want." The question hung between them, deceptively simple. Mason ran his fingers along a silk tie. "It's a good match. She's Harvard Business, I'm MIT. Her father's company is expanding, needs fresh leadership." "You didn't answer my question," Jackson said quietly. Something in Mason broke loose. "Nobody's asked what I want in years," he admitted. "I don't even know anymore." Jackson stepped closer. "I think you do know. You're just afraid of the answer." The truth of it stung. Years of careful planning, of meeting expectations, of pushing down certain feelings, all to build a life that looks successful from the outside. But standing in this shop with Jackson, Mason felt the weight of pretending. "I keep thinking about what you said," Mason whispered, "about feeling alive." Jackson's eyes softened. "It wasn't easy. Coming out to my family, leaving a career everyone thought I should want, but I couldn't keep living someone else's version of my life." He paused. "The hardest part wasn't others' disappointment. It was admitting to myself what I really wanted." Mason left Hayes Bespoke that day with no alterations to his suit, but profound alterations beginning in his heart. Walking through Boston Common, watching couples holding hands without caring who saw, Mason realized true success isn't measured by addresses or titles, or whose name joins yours on wedding invitations. It's found in the courage to recognize your authentic self, even when that recognition threatens everything you've built. The Beacon Hill fundraiser sparkled with crystal and old money, a gathering of Boston's elite that felt more like a museum exhibit than a celebration. Mason stood near the window of the historic mansion, watching Catherine network across the room. 2 weeks until their wedding, and they'd spent more time discussing seating arrangements than their future together. His collar felt tight despite Jackson's perfect tailoring. Robert Walker's voice cut through the murmur of conversation. He stood with several business associates, whiskey in hand. The problem with this generation, he announced, is their obsession with identity politics. My VP wanted to add inclusion to our company values. I told him we're in real estate, not social engineering. Laughter rippled through the circle of men. The Martin's son has one of those rainbow flags on his profile. Can you imagine bringing him to client meetings? Mason's knuckles whitened around his glass. Catherine appeared at his side, her smile dimming as she caught the end of her father's remarks. He's had too much to drink, she whispered. Mason had turned to her. Does that bother you, what he's saying? Something flashed in her eyes, recognition, perhaps even relief that he'd finally asked. More than I've admitted, she said carefully, even to myself. They slipped away to the terrace, the night air cool on Mason's flushed face. For the first time in their 2-year relationship, they truly saw each other. Two people trapped in expectations neither had chosen. Mason, Catherine said quietly, I need to ask something. Have you ever been in love with me, really in love? The question should have shocked him, but instead it felt like permission to breathe. I wanted to be, he answered honestly. Catherine nodded slowly. My friend Claire asked about us once. She said something I can't forget. You two look perfect on paper, but paper doesn't keep you warm at night. She met his eyes. She also wondered if you might be gay. The word hung in the air between them, a truth Mason had buried so deeply he'd almost convinced himself it didn't exist. His silence was answer enough. I think I've always known, Catherine continued, her voice steadier than expected. But we've both been playing roles for so long. She touched his arm gently. We deserve more than a marriage built on performance. Mason felt years of tension release, like a dam finally breaking. What would your father say? Catherine smiled sadly. He'll survive. The question is, will we if we go through with this later that night? Mason called Sarah from his car. It's happening, he said, his voice shaking. Catherine and I talked, really talked. Sarah's relief was audible. Thank God, I was preparing my objection speech for the ceremony. Mason laughed, then grew serious. I still have to tell Robert. He's expecting me to run the new development division after the wedding. Mason, Sarah said firmly, you've spent your entire adult life trying to be the person everyone else wanted. What do you want? The answer came immediately, surprising in its clarity. I want to see Jackson. The admission felt like stepping into sunlight after years in shadow. Sarah was quiet for a moment. Then go. Now, before you talk yourself out of it again. Rain had begun to fall as Mason parked outside Hayes Bespoke. The shop was closed, but light spilled from the back room. He knocked, heart pounding against his ribs. Jackson appeared, surprise crossing his face as he unlocked the door. Mason, what's wrong? Well, Mason stepped inside, rain dripping from his coat. Everything, he whispered, and nothing, not anymore. The words tumbled out about Catherine, about Robert, about years of pretending. I've been living a life designed by other people's expectations, Mason said, voice cracking. But when I'm here, with you, I feel like myself for the first time in years. Or Jackson listened, eyes never leaving Mason's face. When Mason finally fell silent, Jackson stepped closer. What are you saying? Exactly, Mason took a deep breath. I'm gay. I think I've always known, but I convinced myself that success meant following a certain path. His voice strengthened. I'm not getting married. I can't. Jackson's expression softened, but he didn't move. Mason, I don't want to be your crisis solution. I want to be your choice. Mason reached for Jackson's hand. You already are. You have been since MIT. I was just too afraid to admit it. Jackson closed the distance between them, his hand gently cupping Mason's face. Are you sure about this? Really sure? Mason had never felt more certain of anything. I'm tired of living in fear, he whispered. Their kiss wasn't desperate or hasty, it was recognition, like coming home to a place you'd forgotten existed. As rain drummed against the windows, Mason felt himself breaking open and healing simultaneously, discovering that true courage isn't fearlessness, but moving forward despite the fear. The morning light filtered through the bay windows of Catherine's Commonwealth Avenue apartment, illuminating dust particles that danced in the air like nervous witnesses. Mason sat across from Catherine and Robert Walker, the ornate coffee table between them like a demilitarized zone. The engagement ring sat in its velvet box, returned without drama the previous night. Catherine's calm surprised Mason, but Robert's tightly controlled fury was exactly what he'd expected. I don't understand what happened between yesterday and today, Robert said, each word precise and cutting. The invitations are sent, the merger announcement is drafted. This isn't just about a wedding, Mason. This is about legacy. Mason met his gaze steadily, drawing strength from the truth he'd hidden for so long. I can't marry Catherine, he said. It wouldn't be fair to her or to me. Robert's jaw tightened. Is there someone else, another woman? Catherine touched her father's arm. Dad, please. Her intervention gave Mason courage. Not a woman, he said quietly. I'm gay. The words hung in the air, no longer a secret but a declaration. Robert's face flushed deep red. This is ridiculous. You're not gay. You're confirmed or having some kind of breakdown. Catherine surprised everyone by laughing, not cruelly, but with genuine relief. He's not confused. Dad, I think he's finally being honest. She turned to Mason, something like respect in her eyes. My friend Claire suspected. She said you never looked at me the way you looked at your phone whenever you got texts from that Tailor shop. Robert stood abruptly. This is unacceptable. Do you understand what this will do to our reputation, to the company? He paced the Venetian rug, pointing at Mason. You had a path at Walker Real Estate, vice president, future CEO. That's gone now. You realize that, all gone. Mason had expected this reaction, had prepared for it, but the threat still stung. Years of hard work, of proving himself, evaporating in a single conversation. I understand, Mason said, surprising himself with his steadiness. But I can't build my life on a lie anymore, Robert scoffed. Spare me the dramatics. You think anyone cares about your truth in this business? We care about stability, about appearances. He turned to Catherine. And you're just accepting this humiliation. Catherine stood, smoothing her cashmere sweater with practiced calm. Actually, Dad, I'm grateful. The statement silenced the room. This marriage was your strategic alliance, not our love story. Mason just had the courage to say what I couldn't. She turned to Mason. I was dreading spending my life performing happiness. We both deserve better than that. Robert stared at his daughter as if seeing her for the first time. You're both insane, he muttered, reaching for his coat. I have investors to call, damage to control. Mason, I expect your resignation on my desk tomorrow morning. The door slammed behind him, leaving Catherine and Mason in sudden, unexpected solidarity. I'm sorry, Mason said after a moment. For everything. Catherine shook her head. Don't be. I think you just saved both of us. She sank onto the sofa, suddenly looking younger, unburdened. God, can you imagine 40 years of country club dinners and charity galas? Both of us just going through the motions. They talked for hours, really talked, for perhaps the first time. Catherine confessed her own dreams of starting a boutique investment firm focused on women entrepreneurs, something her father had dismissed as playing business. Mason shared stories of Jackson, of MIT, of the self he'd hidden away. When they finally parted, it wasn't as failed fiancés, but as allies who'd escaped the same gilded cage. Outside, Boston sparkled under spring sunshine, the city suddenly looking different to Mason, full of possibilities rather than expectations. He'd lost his career trajectory, his future father-in-law's approval, and the security of a planned life. Yet walking through the public garden, Mason felt lighter than he had in years. The path ahead was uncertain, terrifying even, but it was finally his own to choose, proving that sometimes the bravest act isn't holding on to what seems perfect, but letting go of what isn't authentic. 3 months after what Boston society columns delicately called the dissolution of the Walker-Parker engagement, Mason stood in his new South End apartment, unpacking the last of his boxes. The space was half the size of his Back Bay condo, but felt infinitely more like home. Through the open window came the sounds of street musicians and cafe conversations, a symphony of authentic living that had replaced the sterile silence of his old building. The door opened, and Jackson entered with coffee and bagels. The studio called. They loved your sustainable design proposal for the community center. He pressed a kiss to Mason's temple, casual and comfortable, as if they'd been doing this for years instead of months. In some ways, perhaps they had. Their connection at MIT had merely been paused, not erased. Mason's career transition had been smoother than expected. Sarah had connected him with a progressive architecture firm specializing in sustainable urban development, work that aligned with his original passions before the Walker influence. The salary was lower, but the purpose was real. "I keep waiting for it to feel like failure," Mason admitted, accepting the coffee. "Walking away from everything I spent years building." Jackson settled beside him on the window seat. "Is it failure to stop building on a faulty foundation?" he asked. "Or is it wisdom outside?" Autumn painted Boston in amber and gold, the city transforming just as Mason had. His phone buzzed with a text from Catherine, who had indeed launched her investment firm with unexpected support from her mother. They'd maintained a friendship that confused society but sustained them both. The doorbell rang, announcing Sarah's arrival for Mason's birthday dinner, a small celebration with people who loved him for who he was, not what he represented. As they walked to the restaurant, Mason spotted Robert Walker across the street, exiting his car outside an exclusive club. Their eyes met briefly. Robert's expression remained stony, but he offered the slightest nod before turning away. Not forgiveness, perhaps, but acknowledgement. At dinner, surrounded by laughter and genuine conversation, Mason watched Jackson telling Sarah about their plans to mentor LGBTQ+ youth through a community arts program. The simple joy of being known, truly known, still surprised him daily. "To think I almost missed this," he murmured, more to himself than anyone else. Sarah raised her glass. "To finding courage before it's too late," she said. Jackson's hand found Mason's under the table, warm and steady. "And to building lives instead of resumes," he added. Mason thought about the journey from the pristine corridors of Walker Real Estate to this cozy neighborhood restaurant, from performative success to authentic joy. Later, walking home through the South End's historic streets, Mason and Jackson passed Hayes Bespoke, its windows glowing warmly in the evening. "Remember when you first walked in?" Jackson asked. Mason laughed. "Looking for a wedding suit for a wedding I didn't even want." Jackson stopped, turning to face him. "And what do you want now?" The question was genuine, not rhetorical. Mason considered this. "To build something real," he said finally. "A life where I never have to hide parts of myself again." Jackson smiled, the same smile that had first cracked Mason's carefully constructed facade. "That's a good foundation to start with." Have you ever had to choose between the life others expected and the truth of who you are? What would you sacrifice for authenticity? Share your story in the comments below. Your journey might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Follow Heart Stories for more powerful narratives that remind us it's never too late to rewrite our own endings and find the courage to live our truth.